Hello and welcome back to the channel. And today on the lathe we have a humunculous piece of Sycamore. At its widest, corner to corner, it's 21 inches across, and it's about 18.5 inches at its thinnest. It's about 4.5 inches, no, maybe not, maybe 4 inches thick, but it's thicker on one end than it is on the other, so it's probably 3.5 inches average. Well, that was super descriptive. So what we're doing now is trying to get the back surface into a vaguely bowl shape. We're going to do a winged platter today. Not really a bowl because it's not really deep enough, so we're going to call it a winged platter. You see we're working on the back of the lathe. We're spinning at 800 RPM, which, let me tell you, is plenty fast enough for a 21-inch piece. I wouldn't like to try and step it up to 1400, it would be suicidal, I think. So I'm just working on the wings. As I say, it's a bit thicker one end than the other, so I've got to be careful I don't go across that centre line, so that when I turn it over and make the wings thinner from the other side, I have something to work with. Now this piece was nice and dry, so it was fairly easy to turn. Now it looks a bit out of balance, maybe a bit off centre, but actually it's pretty much in balance. It was quite wide at one end and thin at the other. And I did my method of putting a spike in the vise and balancing the piece on the spike till it found the centre, and that's what I used as my centre point to drill my mortise. So yeah, even at 800 RPM with no turning done to the piece, it was pretty well in balance. Now just working on the bottom, making space for our mortise. Some nice little curly shavings coming off there. Now, it was quite difficult to see what I was doing when I was working on that curve, so rather than push cuts to make the shape kind of nice and smooth, I was doing a few pull cuts and then doing a push cut down the length of that cut I just did, keeping a consistent cut. Got to take those few lumps out and we're pretty much where I want it to be. There was a little bit of bark left on the bottom, so we had to go a bit deeper with our mortise cut. I'm standing there just looking at the curve, making sure I've got all the humps and bumps out. That looks pretty good. So on to the sanding. Starting at 80 grit and worked up to 600 grit on this one. Now it was such lovely marking in the piece, I didn't want to colour it, I didn't want to put any sanding paste on it. I just wanted it to be completely natural finish, so we went for a Howard feed and wax finish on this one. There's the mortise going in. Now I messed it up a little bit. I'm about 5mm wider than I wanted to be on that mortise, so I didn't get quite the grasp of the piece that I wanted with the chuck when I turned it around, but there we go. That's the Howard feed and wax going on. And we've come to the point of the show where we have a look at some of your fantastic work. And today's piece was sent in by Paul at Middle Barn Woodwork. And this is a piece of spalted beech. It's 16 inches across and 4 inches deep. That's some beautiful spalting going on in there, and a nice shape as well. He's going to use it as a fruit bowl. So thanks very much for sending it in, Paul. And if you'd like your work to be featured on the show, you can send your images to willmakeseverything@gmail.com. Alrighty, so it's time to hollow it out. And the first job is we've got to bring the wings down to a consistent level. I want to make the outside of the wing about 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch thick. So I haven't sped up any of the footage in this because I want to show you how slow you have to go when you're turning this massive piece of wood. And Sycamore is quite forgiving. If you imagine if this was a piece of oak or even a piece of ash, I'd be going probably half the speed that I'm going now. It's quite difficult to see where I was going, really. It's slightly off center, the wings, so I got 2 ghost lines on the outside. So I'm happy with the outside wing level now, so I've just got to bring that in and get ready to mark it out for our inner bowl. A trusty pencil, and I reckon that bowl is about 18 inches across just there. So we ran into the same problem we always do when working on the back of the lathe, which is the tool rest isn't close enough to the piece. So I was just going at it in sections and then moving the tool rest. And when you're working in the centre here, it's because we're only spinning at 800 RPM, you really have to go quite slow. I would have liked to have gone a bit faster, but we just can't do it. Obviously the closer you get to the centre, the slower the piece is rotating, so you just have to take your time. Okay, so we're about ready to do the final cut for the inner bowl, or at least where the pencil mark is. And I left about 5mm either side of that pencil mark to the edge of the piece. I didn't want to take it any further than that and have like a depression in the outside of the piece. So all that's left to do now is hollow out the centre, and we will be on to sanding. So this is the final cut, unedited, full length. You can see this was not a quick process. And there we go. That's all the gouge work done. And now it's just time to sand it up to 600 grit. Making good use of the interference pad on that 5-inch disc sander. You can see just how off centre that is now, that shot there. Okay, so I've got my stop in the lathe. And I took the outside on the end grain there up to 600 grit as well. And that's a 600 grit pad. I just took all the sharp edges off. 600 doesn't really take much away, it just rounds it off, but not perceptibly so. And on goes the Howard feed and wax. It's amazing what hides under all that dust. And that's that, folks. I'm pretty happy with how this one turned out. It's an interesting looking piece when it's sat on the table. So, I will leave you as ever with the glamour shots. I hope you enjoyed the video. And thanks to all my subscribers for keeping on coming back, and hello to all my new subscribers. Right, I put a poll out yesterday asking if you wanted to see the failed U project. So if you stick around after the glamour shots, it's not the full project. I've edited it and sped it up as much as possible just so you could see my thought process with it and why it all went horribly wrong. So I hope you enjoy that as well, and I'll see you soon with another video. Cheers, folks. Okay, so you might recognise this piece of yew. This is our failed lampshade. Failed because of this bit here. But I reckon we can still make something good out of it. And I have got one of these carbide It's a carbide death machine, and we've got one of those off Amazon for £15. So I'm going to try and put some texture in this. So I've got my faceplate. Oh, you can see that. Got my faceplate on the lathe, and a set of vice grips and my tool rest. The idea is I can put that there. It stops this rotating. I can put a shape in, then I can move this around and then do the same shape. And hopefully we should get a repeating pattern around the outside of this piece of yew, from which we can then make a bowl. That's the idea. So let's do it. Alright, so I've just turned this monstrosity around, and my mortise has cracked. I'm just going to turn it on and see if it flies off. Well, it didn't fly off, but it is definitely cracked. It's on there pretty tight. Oh, what to do, what to do. Is it just crap? Sort of knew that was going to happen. Let's have a look. Do I put it back on this way and make the mortise bigger? Would it make any difference? Let's make the mortise bigger. Well, ladies and gentlefolk, this thing is pooped. It doesn't want to be a bowl. But we knew that already, didn't we? So into the fire it goes.